Now, without further ado, we'll start the panel. So I will introduce our panelists now. So first of all, we have Aaron Thompson, who is the head of mobile at Accenture Next Gen Engineering. We then have Anna, who is the director of user experience at Pocketworks. We then have Nicholas, who is an iOS developer at the BBC. And last but not least, we have Rich Thorne, who is a principal engineer at Sky. Can we give them all a round of applause, please? Okay, so let's get going. So the big thing at both of these conferences, unsurprisingly, was AI. Now, does someone want to keep a tally of how many times we say AI this evening? I think that's 3 already, isn't it? So I'll come to you first, Aaron. So how do you think that Gemini 1.5 in Android Studio and Swift Assist are going to change technical interviews and take-home tests?
Well, so I think take-home tests are always a bit questionable. So take-home tests, you never really know if the person has actually done it, if their friends have done it, if they've spent all week doing it, if they've just spent it, 20 minutes. So I think it can be a bit questionable take-home tests anyway. And then I think with added AI on top, potentially adds even more of a question. How much have they written? How much have they understood? So I think the take-home tests will have to be kind of part of the interview. So when they kind of brought back in, it would be kind of questioning more upon the architecture side of things, usability, testability, making sure they understand all of that. Probably a lot more focus on whiteboarding. But I would say if you were doing sort of pairing interviews, I would use these tools. We allow people to use IDEs as part of our interview, questions and testing. So, why wouldn't we allow them to use, we allow them to use autocomplete. So I see AI as kind of a super advanced autocomplete. So I think going forward, pairing interviews or kind of interviews where people are live coding in front of you, I would definitely let them use it, because fingers crossed they'll be able to use it when you're at your company as well. And then you'd really see them being able to use all the tools to their advantage.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that you should see AI as maybe just sort of auto-completion on steroids, potentially. It's really good syntax completion.
Yeah.
How about you, Richard? What are your thoughts in terms of assessing candidates if they're using generative AI?
I think really similar, to be honest. I think there's probably 2 sides to it. Like, AI potentially unlocks some jobs for people where they've got complementary skills, and by using AI, then that gets them closer to an answer in a lot of these questions. I think the big worry with take-home tests is that it could use AI too much, and they could potentially prevent you from seeing their real skills. So I think it needs to be treated quite carefully. And I think with Sky, for example, we don't do take-home tests anymore. Like you were saying, Aaron, it's more of a pairing exercise, and you'll work alongside some developers in an interview style, and you ask questions and you'll go through different scenarios and things. So I think potentially it could finally be the death of take-home tests if we're lucky. But yeah.
Could I chip in? Because I was interviewing more than a year ago, and there's never a perfect way to interview. There's either the take-home test, which we all know takes too much time, or there's a pairing interview, which if you're too nervous, you're just gonna F up anyway. So there's no perfect interview, unfortunately. But so hopefully AI can still assist in some way for both parties, maybe. Because if you want to do a take-home test, it would be nice to get some things done quickly that you don't really care about, like a table view. But still be able to explain it afterwards. I think that would be a good thing, or is a good thing with AI. Wow.
Do we think that the death of the take-home test is generally a good thing? Do we think that actually that's a good thing? That's on the way of the dodo. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it's a big expectation. Some companies will make you do 4 or 5 different rounds of interviews, and then to add a take-home test on top of that could take you a week to do is quite an onerous task. So I think if you're already going to do multiple rounds of the interviewing, then the take-home test is very extreme, really.
I think from a company perspective, you've really got to put some effort into developing a take-home test that's going to help you find good developers, and there's often not the time to do that either.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so if that's kind of our view as professionals, what do we think it means for consumers? So not only do we have generative AI now in Android Studio and Xcode and Visual Studio Code, but these are now baked in to the operating systems themselves. So how about you, Anna, from a user experience point of view? Are users going to actually know how to use these new tools? Is it going to be useful for a lay person or a regular person, do you think?
Yeah, so I think from a usability point of view, the barrier is actually quite low in the sense like they can use it, the patterns that are utilized, and especially like with Gemini and the new announcements and the new version of Siri with Tap to Siri and so on. I don't think that they would struggle from a usability perspective. My main concern would be around whether they understand where the data is coming from, the fact that it's training on their own data, and the fact that they don't have to believe everything that comes out of that. So what we were just discussing before, some of the hallucinations that we found with ChatGPT and so on. So I don't think the disclaimer is loud enough for users that have no technical background to understand that some of the things might not be right.
So do you think people are going to use these systems without really understanding some of the hallucinations / privacy concerns, or are people just not going to care because it's cool? And
yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, so I was looking into studies data from 2023 on what was the main concerns for people in the US not to be using ChatGPT at work, and the first one was the fact they could take some of the human crafted original ideas away. And then the second was wrongful information. So yeah, I believe that could be one of the issues.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from anyone on the panel in terms of consumers actually using some of these new generative AI things? Hopefully we'll have Siri be not bad for the first time ever. That's probably a good thing, but are users actually going to see it that way, do you think?
I mean, because I'm an iOS developer, so I would be speaking favorably of Apple. I think they've done it the best way because they made it consumer-faced. Because I haven't watched the Google I/O really, just seen some clips, but it always seems more developer-focused. And I think Apple did it to sell more iPhones. They made it more consumer-friendly, I guess. It wasn't technical. It was just Siri is going to help you do things easier without making it technical. So I think they positioned themselves very well in that sense. And for developers, not so much. We have ChatGPT for that. Well, basically. Yeah.
I was always going to say the bar of entry to technology for me is always, has my mom used it? And she has. So I'd say like she now talks about AI. She was trying to fight a parking ticket. So she got it to write an email and got back some money from a parking ticket. And she now thinks about AI to do things like that now. So I'd really say that's something that, other technologies like the metaverse, if I said that word, she wouldn't have a clue. But AI is in the mainstream now. I think it is being used by consumers across the board.
Cool. So in terms of how it's now available to application developers and designers to use generative AI, in some of the projects that you work on or you've worked on, can you think of any examples where, yes, absolutely, that would massively improve the user experience or the productivity of a user if we used generative AI in that particular way? Can anyone think of any examples?
I can go on that one. One of the apps we work on is called Carps and Calls, and it's basically the NHS will suggest it to anyone that is diagnosed with diabetes in the UK. And it's a carbs counting app and food tracking. So it's sort of a way to help people living with diabetes to live a healthier life. So what we discussed internally was how could we train it so that based on the patterns of what people are logging food-wise, how could we suggest some healthier alternatives or items that could help improve their day-to-day, basically.
Fantastic. That's a really good use case for that, isn't it, really? How about, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Nicholas. The BBC, what's their approach to including some of these things? Because they're obviously kind of a publicly funded company. So are they going to jump in with both feet with some of these things, or are they going to be slightly more cautious, do you think?
I wish I knew. I don't know. It's my answer. I don't. There is some approved AIs you can use, but that's about it. I guess the basic rule is don't share company property / code, I guess.
But how about it from a consumer's point of view? So the iPlayer app, for example,
Right.
are the iPlayer product team thinking about how Gen AI can, I don't know, improve show recommendations, perhaps? I don't know.
I'm with you. I don't know about that actually, but I guess I don't know if the iPlayer does that already. They have recommendations, I guess, but that's just machine learning. Yeah, which gets confused with AI, I guess. But I think that's already there. So I wish I knew more. I wish I had some secret.
We'll invite you back next year, and you can tell us what they've done.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, well, just to follow on from that, I think that is a big thing, isn't it? Like, because most big companies probably have big machine learning models already baked into quite a lot of their products. So, for example, like I work on Sainsbury's and Nexa, and all of the recommendation and the personalization is already going through massive amount of data processing that could be considered AI, but it's just not been called that for the past 10 years. What I would say AI or generative AI is probably better at is taking massive amount of data and distilling it down into human readable content. So I think for me, what could be really good for generative AI is potentially accessibility services. Taking maybe quite complex languages on user interfaces and distilling them down into human readable formats. Big terms and conditions, can that be compressed into something that I can read? Or taking news websites and just distilling it into something that a 5-year-old could read. There's lots of different ways of kind of taking all this data on these apps and compressing it down into a bit easier to read format.
Okay. So sticking with the theme of AI for professionals, take one of the questions here. Coming back to the idea of the take-home test, what is the ideal replacement for a take-home test? If system design is already in the interview process? Not really sure.
I think it really varies on the role. So for things like system design, they're probably tailored more to be like principal engineer roles and technical lead roles. I think in terms of engineer assessments, then I think from what we found at Sky, the best way we found is a pairing exercise. So there's usually maybe a code base that's got a number of issues in it, and you'll talk through those and talk about how you could remedy those as part of that interview process. So I think there's different roles that lead to different ways of doing it. But I think when we've done take-home tests, it's very hard to tell what the candidate's done versus found from somewhere else online or copied from somewhere. And unless you can really dig into that, you can't really tell their breadth of knowledge as that interview process. So I think it's really difficult otherwise.
But perhaps sticking with you a little bit longer there, Richard. So if generative AI in your code editor is something that looks exciting, do you think there are any kind of legal concerns that Sky or any other business may be worried about before they go ahead adopting it? And what may they be, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So at Sky, we just looked at starting to use GitHub Copilot in our development process. So as part of that, there's training that every employee's got to do before they can get access. So that runs through lots of the security implications, things you might not want to use it for. And I think there's always challenges with how accurate it's going to be when you're working with a proprietary code base. Like it's not going to be able to make recommendations based on our code base because it doesn't have access to them. So I think there's always going to be challenges with it. But for example, writing a unit test for a piece of code, it seems quite competent at, but there's other aspects where it just wouldn't be useful. But I think you can use that as part of an interview process as well. If that's a tool we offer for our developers, there's no reason they can't use it as part of an interview process.
Got you. We will probably revisit AI But I don't want tonight to just be about AI. So we'll take a slight pivot. One of the other product announcements from Apple was about them rolling out Apple Vision Pro to more countries. So perhaps, Anna, can you give us your thoughts on it coming to the UK? Is this going to be the new exciting platform that we now need to consider as part of the mobile community in the same way we did with tablets and with watches? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I hope so, in the sense that I'm a fan of VR, and I think from a design point of view, for example, prototyping and making wireframes for 3D apps and virtual reality apps has become easier with Leonardo, Midjourney. For example, I have zero experience using any 3D software. And thanks to these other tools, I managed to do a course on UX for VR and again, more in depth in that. I'm not gonna lie, I still really struggle to find a use case for something that would make it really useful, aside from entertainment, just taken from me playing The Sims in 2004. I'm assuming in the medical sphere or industrial training level that's where it could work. At the moment, I would say still a little too high as a price point for being a widespread entertainment toy. And so I know there are like rumors that they may release a cheaper version in the next year or so. So I don't know whether that is going to change things, but yeah, at the minute I can't really see it going wild.
I guess it's quite telling that the first release of the product had the Pro tag alongside it. So the idea that maybe we'll get a cheaper one, exactly. maybe. Any other thoughts on Apple Vision Pro? Nicholas, you just said you're an Apple guy, right? What do you think of the Vision Pro? Are you going to buy one when it comes to the UK?
No, but I mean, I'm like Anna. I hope it's going to take off, but this is also the downside. Not downside. I don't know what to call it. But Apple's Swift UI, they're all trying to make higher levels of abstraction, I guess you can call it. So making 3D content is quite easy, and I don't want them to make it harder, but it would be fun if Swift could support more low-level stuff, like making game engines and stuff like that. That would be fun, like C++, and it would be fun if you can do those things with Vision Pro, also like create your own low-level engine things, but that's another discussion. Other than that, yeah, Vision Pro is cool, I guess. I haven't tried it, but hopefully.
Well, Apple are pushing that, aren't they? That it's not really clear what the use case is, really. It's like a really cool toy, really. But they are pushing games quite a lot. They made a big deal this time about being able to port over your shaders and things. I don't know, Anna, what do you think? Do you think is that the gateway? If they can get enough game developers, enough producers, then it'll take off?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I know that we tried it. Well, not the Vision Pro, but we tried the Oculus for meetings, and as we're a remote first company, we thought it would be cool to try and have the feeling of being in the same room, and it did help. The meetings that we had were useful and cool, and it was easier to be focused as you weren't just looking at other tabs on your screen. But having to charge yet another tool and then the software updates and all just kind of made it fade away after 3 months. Yeah, I don't know if the gaming is going to be enough, but then I'm not a gamer, so maybe somebody else would answer differently.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a pessimist with the. So I own a Meta Quest and a HTC Vive, and I still say they're not gonna take off. You know, I was gifted that HTC Vive, gifted the Meta Quest, and it just gathers dust. And you know, that is the gaming side of the market. It's fun to have people around and play with them, but they're expensive toys. I think I can't see people getting home from work after looking at a screen for 8 hours a day to then scrap 2 more screens to their face for the next 3 hours. It's just, I think it's just not going to happen.
I mean, what I like, maybe one of the most cool things with the Vision Pro was you can extend your screens. That's cool. So you can use it at work, I guess. Make work like expense. Oh yeah, that's a cool thing.
The price point's just going to mean it's never really going to take off. And I know they were talking about a cheaper one, but I don't think they can reduce the size of the battery, which is another problem. And they can't keep the same feature parity for the same sort of lower price point. So I just don't see it taking off.
So if they could reduce the price point to no more than a 5K screen, would you buy the Vision Pro rather than the 5K screen? Because then you've got the unlimited, real estate. Is that maybe that's maybe the
more tempted?
Yeah,
but yeah, there's more use cases then. But yeah,
And that's
sorry, go ahead.
like a comfort issue is really heavy on your head. Like, I remember, after a 1 hour, 1 hour and a half meeting, we would just be like, I bought even like a strap that was meant to feel lighter. It didn't. So I don't know whether I would work on that all day, but it would definitely be more tempting.
It does also imply you've got the money to buy a 5K screen as well. So.
That's true. Yeah. Does anyone use the Vision Pro? Oh yes. Come join the panel.
If you're an Apple app developer, if your app's got a certain amount of downloads, they're inviting you to go down to London. Because I work on Sainsbury's, and they invited the Sainsbury's team to go.
Yeah, I know some BBC people went there. I didn't get accepted, unfortunately.
Compared to the Quest, Vision Pro, you can have like more of an AR view. So like it's not as immersive all the time. So that should support using it for longer time in theory. But yeah.
Okay. So another thing that stood out to me watching both the presentations was actually how little they talked about iOS and Android, which was slightly heartbreaking, really. What do you think that says? Does that say that actually now they've got such a wide portfolio of different things? We've got Gen AI, we've got Vision Pro, etc. Or have iOS and Android, have they just plateaued? Have they figured out how to do mobile operating systems? And they're very similar these days. Even down to now the iOS home screen, you can rearrange the apps. How exciting for that to be the most biggest announcement. I don't know, this is sort of like crystal ball time, right? But have we reached the peak of mobile operating system excellence, do you think? Or is there a way to go?
Should I go? Yeah. I mean, in terms of, maybe this is a side track, but I don't know why they need to release a new version each year. I think if I don't know what Google does, but it doesn't have to be a new OS major version each year, really. Just do minor updates, which they are really, I think if we did that, the same with releasing the M1s, M3s, it has to do one each year, which I don't understand. I think that makes it more plateaued, maybe, in a way.
There's been a lot that's changed in the past couple of years, so we're probably reaching that point where they've kind of matured, and there's not that much else you could go after now that's kind of a low-hanging fruit. If you wanted to do anything else, there'd be kind of serious investment needed.
How about you, Anna? What do you think from a...
Yeah, that's I would say the same thing. So they've sort of reached a level which there's not going to be, obviously the AI side, but aside from that, there's not going to be any drastic change probably. On the Google end, they were always more, always keener on allowing the users to have more customization and a bit more freedom. So I guess, they're just catching up on iOS on the stuff that's stuck.
Got you. Okay. I mean, that was a bit of a doom and gloom question, wasn't it? It's like there's nothing exciting. Surely there's something exciting. Do you have what?
The icons.
Oh, of course. Well, as the designer on the panel, what do you think of that? Is that
Should I mention that?
Oh no, you should have done. Is that unleashing the creativity of all of the users, or is that just is Steve Jobs turning in his grave right now?
I hope he is not kidding. The guy, maybe cut this part. I'm not too happy about that one. I'm not gonna lie. I think no designer probably will be. I mean, there's an accessibility part to this issue in the sense that it's sometimes difficult to get people to believe how important like an accessible color contrast and all sort of like yeah, like the colors that you pick are not just about your branding, but also whether people are going to be able to use your app or not and understand patterns and stuff. So having the top dogs kind of messing about with the color slider is a bit concerning from a design perspective. And well, without counting on how many brand designers have spent hours and hours trying to craft the perfect icon to then have it hot pink. So yeah.
But can you disable it? Can you disable the icon to be tinted?
What do you mean?
So BBC, let's take BBC. Can BBC tell in their whatever thing to Apple, don't tint my icon?
I don't think you can you?
No. Do you know?
Okay.
You don't know?
I don't think
okay. Yeah.
it's just
Well,
it goes against brand guidelines in theory.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how that's gonna pan out. But yeah, from the announcement, it didn't seem like you would be able to disable that.
No. Yes, it's weird.
Yeah. But yeah, but being able to finally customize the two icons on the lock screen, that's quite cool. But yeah, when that's the most exciting announcement, Yeah.
What do we think that says about the difference between Apple and Google, in the sense that you've been able to do this on Android for a little while now, right? And it's only now that people are going, oh God, this is why are they doing this? Is that just like a cultural thing between, I don't know, the design aesthetic of Apple things versus the I don't know, the culture that Google have cultivated? I don't know. How do you make sense of that?
It's more of just a low hanging fruit. They could do these quite easily, so why not? Rather than they had nothing else to offer, so maybe that's an easy one to give.
I'd say it does show a bit of a shift in Apple's mindset. Like, you used to be able to take somebody's iPhone and give it to somebody else, and they would be able to, it would look identical. Every single thing would look identical on that. It would, the layout on your home screen, the colors of all of the apps would all look the same. It was meant to be so when you buy a new iPhone, you didn't have to remember everything again. It was just always the same thing. So I think it probably is a shift in the market, that people aren't really buying phones that often anymore, so they're not having to do these big leaps in technology every year, or having to kind of set their phones up again. So yeah, maybe it's Apple's shift and going, oh, people own their phones for longer now. They want to make them a bit more personal. It could be. I'm guessing in Apple's mindset.
Yeah. I do wish we could have Johnny Ive on the panel. I'd really love to know his thoughts. Sir Johnny Ive. Sorry, I should say that. Okay, let's ask some audience questions here. So, how do we think that Siri with ChatGPT on an iPhone is going to compare to Gemini in Android? Is one going to be better? Are they going to be different? How do we predict that's going to work out? Is it going to maybe impact buying decisions, that people want the best LLM baked into their phone, and therefore they will go for one over the other, perhaps?
I think Apple have maybe gone down the potentially better route, where their apps are going to give capabilities. So each app, as part of its almost like manifest, will be able to say it's capable of performing an action. And so on the device, there'll be multiple large language models that will then be able to read those actions. So say if I think the example they gave is like, will I be able to make my daughter's play in time? It will be able to know that your messaging has the action of read messages, and then we'll have the maps, which will have navigation, and it will be able to kind of route between those two. As far as I know, Google didn't really come up with that approach. Theirs is a large language model in the generative AI approach of you ask it a question and it will tell you something back, whereas Apple kind of took the approach of, let's make it do actions. Can it chain actions on your phone together to come up with a solution, rather than just trying to brute force what you've just asked it. So at the moment, I would say, like, at least what they released, Apple's one looks more impressive. I think the individual models are less impressive than Gemini, but
yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. Because they did it perfectly for consumers, basically. Apple did. Yeah, so I agree. I mean, I think that's what they got right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's going to be better in terms of Gemini or Siri. I don't know. I haven't used the Google phone in a very long time, so I don't know.
Will you now? Maybe will this be the thing that makes you buy the new Pixel? Perhaps.
Maybe. And I just heard today a side note, but that the Apple's AI won't be available in EU. But I don't know if that's correct. There was something EU law that was his. So maybe we have to wait in EU. Maybe that will lend me to buy a Google phone. I don't know.
Google was mentioning Astra as the agent, so that was sort of doing a bit of the actions-based automation that you were saying, right?
Yeah, that was the thing where it was like it was using the camera, wasn't it? It was like multimodal stuff, wasn't it? That was it. Yeah. Like
Finding
full
your
experience.
glasses or,
Yeah. So related to that, then hallucinations have already been discussed here. With it being such a well-documented phenomenon, can you ever trust the output of an LLM?
No.
Good, strong answer.
I mean, the question was if you can trust an LLM.
If we sort of joke about hallucinations, right? It's a point that they do hallucinate. I mean, that's noise in the signal. So when can we get to a point where we're happy that these can be trusted enough, or will we never really get to that point?
Do you trust Google search?
Yes, I suppose. Me personally.
Yeah, like I guess it's, if you type something into Google search, what comes back has been what's advertised or what Google has prioritized on your behalf because it thinks you want that. Same sort of thing for a large language model, I would say. So I think having just some common sense and some skepticism is always kind of a good thing. Like I guess they put the thing saying, don't trust this, which Google search definitely doesn't. It just kind of links you out to another website, and if somebody's wrote nonsense, it's up to you to believe that or not. So yeah, I'd say like we shouldn't be trusting them, and we never should.
I think it's somehow easier from a user perspective to trust ChatGPT. I think it's down to the fact that you're conversing with it rather than just reading an article. So that's probably the riskier part. I
suppose it's similar to on Google search. If you say, "I'm feeling lucky," just give me the first result. That's kind of what an LLM is, really. It's like, here you go. Do you trust me? I suppose, rather than do you feel lucky? Okay. Where should we go now? Okay, so let's pivot away from AI once more. We may come back to it later. We sort of talked about this earlier, that maybe Apple lacks innovation. I'm sure they would disagree with that wholeheartedly. How do you think they can innovate? Is there a big open goal that they can score in, for example, that they're not doing at the minute?
Developer experience.
Can you elaborate on that? What about the Apple developer experience is not good?
Xcode is. I have a hate relationship with Xcode. It's atrocious.
I love Xcode. I hear everyone says they don't like Xcode. Have you tried Visual Studio?
Have you tried any other IDE?
I mean, I hear people talk about the JetBrains, whatever it's called, or some other thing. I love Xcode.
I would personally. I think if they can improve their better APIs for developers. Backward support just doesn't exist in Apple. So like I currently work on an app that has to support iOS 14. I might as well just look at WWDC 20 because the new technology that's come out, I can't use for 5 years now. Google doesn't have that issue. They do let you support back. That's the sort of thing that frustrates me as a developer. Like I want to use the latest technology. I want to use the new cool stuff. And on iOS, I feel like I can't do that unless I'm on a personal project. Like if I'm working for a bank or a big retail company, there's no chance of them only supporting iOS 17 or 18. Like they're always going to have a backwards compatibility, and that really bugs me as a developer.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, how about you then, Nicholas? If you love Xcode so much, what are the new things in iOS development that you're most excited about?
I mean, yeah, there wasn't that much. Really.
You got to think of something, man. Come on.
There's the Swift 6, but I mean, the one feature I know, sorry, it's the Swift concurrency, which is a good thing. That's a very tricky thing, but yeah, that's a good thing. That's about it. I mean, I wish there were, but that's also a personal interest because I'm interested in metal and whatnot. Not the music, the graphics framework. That they made more resources and training materials on metal and that stuff because it's very hard. There's so much out there. There's a lot of old Objective-C and stuff like that, and I don't know. So yeah, it would be nice with stuff like that, but they are trying to push a lot of games for Mac, which makes sense because of the M series of the Silicon thing. But it would be nice if they also allow developers to make games rather than just relying on game studios with proper engines and to do it. So that would be cool. But they haven't done that. So that was a different question.
That was good.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so something else that popped out to me was through Google, through the Google I/O announcements that they were fully embracing Kotlin multi-platform, and it was sitting alongside Flutter as kind of like a first-class citizen for doing cross-platform development. What do we think that means? Is this just another case of Google having their finger in 100 different pies? Or actually, are they now going to lean more into Kotlin multi-platform rather than Flutter? Or can we not make any predictions because this is Google? I don't know. Richard, what do you think of that?
I don't think Flutter's going away anytime soon. I think they've done this time and time again where they kind of edge their bets and pick multiple technologies. So I think there's different use cases for each of them. And I really don't see one winning out against the other at the moment. I think they'll both be there for a long time. And I know there's kind of the news that they laid off a lot of the Flutter devs, and I think that came alongside that, and that sparked a lot of speculation. But I don't think it's as cut dry as that. And I think Flutter's still got quite a long run life ahead of it.
I guess I see it slightly differently on that one. At least when I'm kind of talking to native developers, I find their reaction to React Native is they'll kick you or they'll hit you or they'll trying to get a native developer to do React Native is like blood out of a stone. Flutter, they're kind of maybe on board with, but Kotlin multi-platform, you've already got Android developers on side, and then iOS developers are like, are you going to do all the back-end code? Fine, I'll just do the front end anyway, and they're generally on board with it. So I think that might be the bridging gap between native cross-platform. I think Kotlin multi-platform's got legs, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely agree. I don't think this is us saying that it's not going to be around for a long time. I just don't think they're going to be as competitive as each other as people might think. I think a lot of people have picked Flutter for good reasons. I don't think they're going to undo that and re-platform to Kotlin multi-platform.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Yeah.
Can you see yourself doing any of the other cross-platform technologies, Richard? Do you want to dive into Flutter? Does that particularly fancy?
Not particularly Flutter, but I can see us potentially combining Kotlin multi-platform and React Native at some point. I think there's sub-modules we could expose that could work quite well. So across Kai, things like identity, we could build something Kotlin multi-platform and then embed in other apps. So yeah, I think I can see that happening.
I think they've just added support for Room and core data. So and I think they announced that they're using Kotlin multi-platform for their G Suite as well. So for Google Docs and Google Drive, Google have said they're going to use Kotlin multi-platform to write those apps. So I think that's quite a big signal from Google that, you know, they do intend to use this tool for quite some time. Yeah.
I'd love to know Google's internal sort of decision tree for when they think we're going to build a new app. Like, how do we do it? What do we use? And they've now got this huge toolbox of really interesting tools. It's like, you know. Anyway, maybe we'll get someone from Google on the panel. I'll ask them next year. Okay, we've got a question in from the audience. Do you use AI or automated tools to secure your applications from cybersecurity issues as developers for both Google and iOS platforms? So I suppose this is around using AI to help you improve the cybersecurity of your own applications. Is anyone doing that? Has anyone come across that before?
No.
We don't use AI, but we have other tools that kind of review code on a regular basis for security issues and things like that. But I don't think we've got anything AI based at the moment.
Okay, maybe a similar question, but sort of the other way around, really. So Apple have always made a big deal about privacy, and that's the thing that they've said for years and years. When everyone else has been talking about AI, this is the first year that they've actually said AI, although they had to say Apple Intelligence, of course, very Apple thing to do. But they're trying to bridge that gap now with their private cloud compute. So if you do need to go to the cloud, it's in the private cloud compute, right? How much do we believe that that is actually going to live up to the privacy requirements that Apple says it will? Or is this just another one of those just trust us kind of situations? What does everyone think?
I think they will, yeah.
Why? Why are you so trusting?
The reason is because they have privacy has been their thing for so long. It didn't just come out now with the AI. There's like this incident where FBI or whatever wanted to hack into an iPhone, but they didn't want to use the backdoor sort of thing. So you know that puts them in a good light in that aspect. But also this the cloud thing. I'm not a cloud engineer, but isn't it that you can audit it? So other people can audit it, I guess. I'm not sure how it works. So that should benefit their privacy concern or security. But yeah, I'm not a cloud engineer, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think you go first.
I was going to say, yeah, they were surprisingly open about all of their sort of privacy and security information that they've done for their private cloud compute. So I think, you know, the technical details are, if the large language models on device don't feel like they're capable of performing the user's task, they'll then encrypt their user's data that of that request, send it only to the large language model and private cloud compute that will actually be able to perform that task. So there's no kind of way for the other models to get that data. When the data is on the cloud, they've said they'll go and then delete that information, and all of the logging associated with all of that will be deleted. I think my biggest concerns with all of this is, well, one, don't want to be a site reliability engineer at Apple, because no logging, no data means if any of that goes wrong, you've got no idea. I think the other thing I can kind of see Apple kind of breaking how large language models are really kind of working. So at the moment, they've got a massive context window. So, you know, you can potentially send across 1 million characters to these large language models, and they'll be able to kind of remember your previous conversations. If every single time that you send a request to Apple and it comes back, it's deleted, they've deleted your context window potentially. So, you know, it might make these large language models quite basic. So like they're only, when they just go to the cloud, it doesn't remember anything about you. And then if they kind of work around that problem, are they just going to then store tons and tons of information on your device? So every single time it does make a request, it's sending all of your information back to Apple again. I don't know. So I think it does sound private, but also does it kind of break?
I think that problem is fine, actually, because I don't think, like we said before, the main part of their AI is on device, consumer things. So I don't think a consumer is aware or maybe cares about the other large language model on the cloud knowing previous conversations. And I think they did really good with who they were targeting in a way, because I use ChatGPT a lot and I wouldn't use Apple's AI. So yeah, it's different targets. I think that's the difference, but that's just my opinion. Yeah.
Something else that came out that I was following was the rumor was that Apple were going to adopt Gemini as their large language model, and obviously they went for ChatGPT in the end. However, they did sort of hint that other LLMs would be coming along in the future. So Apple are not getting too specific about what they will or won't support, and maybe there'll be a sort of a marketplace of LLMs. Do you think that they will want Gemini sitting alongside ChatGPT? And secondly, will Google allow them? What do you all think?
I think it depends how successful it is. So if Gemini does end up winning now and providing better results, then there's potential they might integrate it. But I think they've probably ruled that out already, to be honest, by going with ChatGPT. Like, I don't think they'll go backwards on that.
Yeah, I think Google offer Gemini as Alphabet. Google own lots and lots of different things, and they bet on a lot of different things. Android is quite separate to their AI business and is separate to their sort of workspace business. So, I think they sell Gemini as a separate thing to their business. So I don't think Google are precious that it has to be in their own tools. I think they do want to be selling it. And then I guess Apple are kind of doing the right thing and just buying the best one. Like, there's Anthropic's Claude, which, I think the latest one that's just been released is kind of proven to be better than ChatGPT. So, maybe Apple in a year's time might kind of switch over to their model instead. And then there's the Facebook's Llama one as well, again, which is, open source and is kind of proven to work really well. So again, like they might kind of, they're probably just going to take the best one, really.
Yeah, and the Apple end, they were also quite keen on the image generation, so with Genmoji and the whole like text to image. So I don't know whether around Leonardo, Midjourney as well, there's going to be some easy integration with that.
Whether it's just a lack of they don't have an alternative at the moment, and maybe when they catch up a little bit, ChatGPT will be removed and they'll bring in some proprietary version. But who knows?
Of course. Speaking of Genmoji, what's going to be the first Genmoji that you make? How about you, Anna? What are you going to do? Are you going to be a unicorn on a surfboard or something, maybe?
Wow.
That's the hardest question I've asked you all night, isn't it?
I really don't know. Probably my dog with a Pizza Hut, I would say.
Very good. Very
pretty
good.
solid, yeah.
Okay, something more specific. Again, from the audience. Does the tinting of icons continue the trend of Apple de-emphasizing design? Swift UI encourages more Apple-like interfaces, and this is perhaps quite controversial. Eventually, will there be no designers? I can imagine what your answer may be,
No.
but okay.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, it's not looking good. It's not looking good for a lot of people, if that can mean.
I suppose let me make that slightly less contentious. So, how is this going to affect the way that you think about user interface design and customer experience when perhaps now the system is constraining you even more into kind of this, fitting with the operating system rather than having that creative kind of flair, perhaps?
Yeah, it's a good one. To be honest, I don't think I have a great answer for this one. Yesterday, I watched the Confi 24, which is sort of the Figma equivalent of the announcements we're discussing. And obviously, they're really pushing the AI tool. I don't think they gave a name to it, though, so they're one step behind. But I guess there's like sort of the generation of a lot of designs that look exactly the same, mainly because they work, or like they're not that bad in the sense a lot of the patterns that have been used by popular apps are then sort of reused in others. So you can't go massively wrong. At the same time, they lack context, they lack sort of understanding whether they would actually work for that situation, for that user, for that. So yeah, it's a tough one because you can test something really quickly. You can get in front of the users with a polished prototype in a way, easy way. You don't have to spend time building your own interactive screens and so on. But at the same time, are we losing any sort of original thoughts? I don't know. I guess that's where.
Yeah, I suppose there's an interesting parallel there. But going back to what we said at the beginning there about using Gen AI in code, if it just gets you to the end goal quicker and it's more efficient, isn't that what auto-completion is for? Isn't that what a compiler is for, etc.? But maybe there's a worry that we're losing some of the actual ability to be developers. Do you feel like a similar sort of thing in the design space? Perhaps, it's easier to build a design because you're now more constrained, but you perhaps lost some of the creativity or some of the, I don't know, some of the profession, some of the skills, perhaps.
Yeah, in the announcement yesterday again, they tried a couple of different use cases and apps that they wanted to design, and most of them just looked exactly the same. So you have an horizontal scroll, the cards, and again, often that is the pattern that is more that is easier to understand to the user. So it's probably the one that you would settle on anyway. But I guess it's just you normally get there by going through an iterative process and testing wireframes and seeing what works and what doesn't. While in here, you jump into the conclusion, and yes, it may work, but maybe there was a better way that you're not even going to explore in this case. So yes, that's it. That's me trying to keep a job.
That's what we're all trying to do. We're coming up towards the end now, so I think we'll just do a few last quick-fire questions. So I'm going to ask you both the same 2 questions. The first one is going to be, what do you wish was announced as a professional? So that's someone working in building mobile apps. And secondly, what do you wish was announced as a consumer? So that's someone who uses mobile apps. Richard, I'm going to go to you first. What do you think, as a professional, what would you wish was announced? And then as a consumer?
I think as a professional, in terms of what's announced, I think it's a difficult one because there's so much out there at the moment. I think we're still playing catch up with a lot of things that have been announced recently. So I don't think there's anything that stands out to me that really we're after or needing. I think it takes a long time for whatever gets announced to get fully adopted. And I think we're still going through that cycle. So yeah, I don't really have any major ones. What
about you as a mobile user though? What did you want?
I really like some of the IO features. I think some are quite gimmicky. I think time will tell whether some of those play out and get wider adoption. But I think some of the Gemini AI features are really interesting. I think the way that some of the data from apps can plug into some of the Apple Intelligence could work really well. But I think it's difficult to know until we actually see some apps adopting it.
Very good. You're next in line, Nicholas. What did you want as a professional, and what about you as a consumer?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, Metal, as Apple's Metal framework to be more resources, and all that would have been fun. As a consumer, I wish they did the iPad OS better, or more, not better, that's not the right word, but took advantage of the hardware, basically. Because it would be cool to, eventually, I don't think that's ever going to happen, but you could, we're talking about Xcode, you could probably replace your Mac with an iPad if they made iPad OS support these sort of apps. But yeah, the other cool thing with the iPad was the calculator. So yeah, that's what I think. Nice calculator.
About time. 18 years later, we finally got a calculator. How about you, Anna?
Math Sketch was cool though.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
I'm gonna answer very similarly on the professional side, in the sense that we're often playing catch up with some of the cool gadgets that were released the year before. I'm gonna say from a consumer perspective, I'm a widget lover. So I have customized my whole home screen with different widgets, so a better experience on setting those up and more availability would have been cool.
Cool, very good. Last but not least, Aaron.
I think from a professional side, they released what I wanted them to release, which was kind of Swift intelligence, and then the same sort of support in Android Studio. So yeah, like I think having those tools available to you as a developer is really good. And then from the consumer side, again, they released what I wanted them to release because I'm an Android user. So they released their Find My network, which is Android's equivalent to the AirTags. So now I can kind of track my cat. And I've been wanting to do that as an Android user for years now, so I can now do that. So yeah, that was a big tick from me.
You know, when the platforms are plateaued, when you think all I need now is to be able to track my cat, and I will be a happy consumer.
I've peaked. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. I think should we give our panelists a round of applause? Thank you very much.